Episode 55, Preventing Burnout for Caregivers of the Sandwich Generation with Meredith Gardner.
Welcome to Latter-day Life Coaches, the podcast where each episode is a conversation between me, Heather Rackham, and one of my amazing coach colleagues. Each coach here is a member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints and certified through the Life Coach School. Together, we have one main goal, helping you live your best life no matter what. You ready for this conversation with the coach? Here we go.
When you are young, you feel your parents are invincible and will never have failing health or need extra care from you as their child. But as life expectancy increases in the United States, being a caregiver to parents is a role many of us will most likely find ourselves in at some point and in some capacity. Taking on the needs of ailing parents can mean significant life adjustments for their children, now being their caregivers. Coach Meredith Gardner helps her clients take on this role by balancing their obligations and their desires so that they live in a space of contentment rather than resentment. Come listen today to learn how to navigate this often unspoken role you may currently be navigating or find yourself navigating in the future. If you would like to watch this episode, you can find us now on YouTube. Please look in the show notes for the link, and we will see you there. Now enjoy this interview with Heather and Meredith.
I get to talk to Coach Meredith Gardner today, and I am so anxious to have this conversation and excited for you guys to hear it. Meredith, before we get started, why don't you tell us a little bit about you?
Thank you, Heather. I'm glad to be here with you today. My name is Meredith Gardner. I live in Western Colorado. I am the mother of 5 daughters and one beautiful grandson. He's the joy of my life. I have been married to my high school sweetheart for 29 years, and we've lived in Michigan. We went to Utah State and Michigan and Colorado. So we've kind of jumped around a little bit, and I became a caregiver to my parents in a part-time caregiver in 2018 when my mom was diagnosed with pancreatic cancer. She had been caring for my dad, who did not have a diagnosis at the time, but was struggling, declining, having difficulty getting dressed, moving around as quickly as he used to, and just kind of declining is the best way to describe it. That's where my caregiving journey began. And I found life coaching just a few months later when a friend introduced me to Jody Moore's podcast. And then I started listening to the Life School podcast. And about 6 months after that, I was really feeling like I want to do this. And I was using the tools and my struggles with caregiving, my relationship with my dad, or just like emotional overeating, things that I was doing that I noticed when I was at their house helping them. And I used the life coaching tools I was learning. And I was like, I think I want to become a life coach. And I didn't tell anybody for a while. And then I was going on a girls' trip with a few friends, and I kind of opened up to them that I was thinking about this and shared with them some of the tools. And I was like, let me try this model thing with you that I'm learning, and tried it with one of the friends. And lo and behold, it worked. Like I could see in the result what, she was creating. And she goes, Meredith, you could be a caregiver coach. You could coach caregivers. And I was like, what? Like, yes, that's it. That's exactly what I want to do. So I came home from that trip, enrolled in the life coach school, and started that while I was still caring for my parents and while my daughter was planning a wedding. And I kind of thought I was going to lose my mind a few times, but worked through it. And so glad I did. Both of my parents passed away last year. And that also, to have the life coaching tools I have, was extremely helpful in that experience as well. And now I'm just trying to spread the word. There aren't a lot of caregiver coaches. People go for coaching to, improve their marriage or to improve their health. But a lot of people are like, what? A caregiver coach? I've never heard of that. What is that? And so I just explained that caregiving is challenging. You feel a lot of overwhelm. There's burnout is highly relatable with caregivers. And I have these tools that can help you come back from that and not burn out and not hate your parents, and learn how to get along with your siblings and how to prepare for their passing and how to deal with watching them decline and all of the emotions that come along with caregiving. Like, I have a way to take some of that pain and give you more power. I have absolutely loved it.
As I think about it, and the feelings that you would want to have towards your parents or whoever you're caregiving for would be feelings of just immense gratitude and love for them in that time of their life. But if you are in the caregiver position, it's got to become challenging to not let the feelings of obligation turn into resentment, turn into all of that. So
yeah,
what a gift. I guess I am thinking that you're able to help people get what they want out of that time, be able to experience the love and not have to struggle with the resentment.
Absolutely, because it all feels out of your control, right? You cannot control the illness that they may have or their aging. You can't control that. You feel powerless and like you just are being whipped around by the tail. But how you're approaching it is in your control. And so some examples of that, right? I hear people that say, if I'm a good daughter, I'll do what my mom needs when she calls me. Well, then, every day or several times a day when mom's calling and you're dropping everything because you think a good daughter needs to do that, in very short time, you're going to be resenting mom for how often she's calling you. And what if a good daughter says, hey, mom, save that for Tuesday and Thursday. Everything you need done, I'm there for you on Tuesday and Thursday, or whatever it works for you, right? Another one that I had when my dad was suffering and some days was not pleasant and fun to be around. I had this belief that my dad should be my hero, and he's not acting like a hero today, right? So where was it coming from that I was thinking my dad in his 80s, suffering from Parkinson's, lost all his independence, needed help with everything, should be pleasant and should be my hero, right? And then that prevented me from seeing ways he was being my hero, how he was handling it in heroic ways. I wasn't able to see it when I was looking at it with such a negative and like really narrow mindset. So those kind of things that we bring into our caregiving journey, those beliefs, can make the experience so much harder. And we just think that it's because of their disease or because of them, all these things out of our control, when really we have so much control over what we bring to the journey.
It's a time in your life where there's valuable lessons learned, I'm sure, like, especially because you can take the things you are learning and the tools that you can teach. And then those, for you, it sounds like you were able to apply them also in other areas of your life. So it's not just that you are learning skills to help you be the caregiver, but these are like skills that help in every aspect of our life.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And I focus on the sandwich generation, which is a caregiver who's caring for an elderly parent or family member, and then they may also still have children in their home, or maybe they help with their grandchildren. So they're multi-generational caregivers.
Did you have kids at home still when you were?
I did. I had two teenagers at home. And so, yes, they could do more for themselves, but there were things like my youngest daughter called me as I was at my parents' getting on Facebook to watch her band concert. She called me. She was like, Mom, do I have a band concert tonight? So
no, you don't.
Yeah, so things got dropped, but they also learned they did more of the cooking. They had to keep up on their own schedule and where they needed to be and what homework they needed to get done. They had to be a little more on top of that. My husband was there, of course, and he did great, but it's different than me being there, always saying, hey, what do you got going today? When is this due? What's going on? It was very powerful for me to see actually that my kids could do more than I was giving them credit for while I was gone with my parents. When I was with my parents, I was thinking of what was happening here at home. And when I was home, I was worried about what was going on with my parents. So those tools of also just mind management and yep, I can't be everywhere at once and I can't control all of these things. And, my parents are in good hands. My brother's nearby. My kids are in good hands. My husband's nearby. So just calming that part of me that was always worried about what was happening without me being there. Like I had control over everything,
Well, and I think probably a piece of that too, and you alluded to maybe here, is that it's not even so much the making sure your daughter doesn't miss her band concert or getting everything done, but it's just wanting to be with your children, like that desire to be where they are and not missing out on their lives and maybe even feeling guilty for not being there or things like that too. So.
Yeah, definitely. Definitely.
The sandwich generation is a term I have heard you use before, but I had not heard it until I had heard you say it. So it's kind of an interesting way to look at it, but it's such a good visual.
Yeah. And it is, I find myself, as much as I'm educating people on what a caregiver coach can do, I am educating people on what the sandwich generation is. It's a term that I feel, not everybody is familiar with. And so even people who have been in it, I was interviewed on a podcast last week and one of the interviewers was like, oh, that's what I did when my parents lived next door. and I had 2 babies. She said, I had 2 babies while my parents lived next door and I was helping with them. She's like, oh, I was in the sandwich generation, so people don't often recognize it even when they're in it.
And there's something just nice to being able to put a label to it sometimes, rather than, oh, I'm helping to take care of my parents and my kids. It's like, oh, it's just a sandwich generation.
Yeah.
It's just like a label. I don't know.
It's like it's a community too. And we long for that as humans. We long to belong in communities and it unites us and it helps us know that we're not alone in the experience.
Well, I'm curious because this is a space where we do share the same religious beliefs in this life coaching community here with Latter-day Saint life coaches. If there has been common obligations or frustrations that people bring to you as caregivers because they have the religious beliefs that we have.
Yes, I have seen some of that because we are a church that there's a lot of commitment involved. There's a lot of shoulds, to be a good member, to be doing what I should be doing to get where I want to go in the next life. We carry that, we do live that way. And that's where this feeling of obligation comes from. I live next door to mom. I am her only daughter. It's what a good daughter does. It carries through there too. And that's where I developed this tool I called the Contentment Grid. When I heard a phrase by Brooke Castillo on one of her podcasts that when she said, obligation without motivation just leads to resentment. And I suddenly saw this map in my mind of, okay, if we can map our level of obligation and map our level of motivation, we can see what that's creating for us. So I developed this tool where I do exactly that. The high end of obligation is this feeling of I have to, and by obligation, I mean like how bound we are, a feeling of being bound to a duty. So if I feel highly obligated that I have to do this, like I don't have a choice, I have to do this because I'm the daughter or whatever. And that as a life coach is what I help them understand. Why are you feeling you have to do this? Then when you show up from I have to, and then things don't go as you want, or like you're motivated maybe by at least I could get a thank you. At least they could acknowledge all the work that I do. That is being motivated by reward or recognition. So high obligation and low motivation lands you in resentment. You're living in resentment most of the time. And that's just one corner of the grid. The other grids consist of frustration, intolerance, and detachment, all depending on your level of motivation and your level of obligation. The ideal place to be is right square in the middle, is where I call contentment. And that's where your obligation is coming from. I want to do this. I'm doing this because I want to be here. And you're motivated by, I recognize there's a purpose and a cause towards doing this. So motivation is action, obligation is feeling. And that lands us in a sense of contentment where I'm doing this because I want to, and I see a purpose behind it. I also recognize it's not going to be easy, and there may be some hurdles, but I know I can handle it. Another word for contentment is fulfillment, which when we are living from a place where we want to be doing something and we love the reason behind it, we feel fulfilled. It's like coming from our inner, deepest, truest self. And then when we come across the hard parts, we're not as thrown by it because we know we can handle it, and we know we're there for the right reason because it feels right to us. Otherwise, we're just circling around contentment all the time in frustration, resentment, intolerance, detachment. And that's what leads to burnout. When you're in a state for a prolonged amount of time, it leads to burnout. There's 3 parts of burnout. You feel exhausted, you are cynical, where it's like a lack of caring, and you feel inefficient, like nothing I do matters anyway. It's like moving through sludge. When I can help people identify why they are feeling obligated, why they are acting, and then show them what it's producing for them, suddenly there's less chance you're going to bend whenever somebody wants you. You're going to say, actually, I'm not available that day, or Mom, I can't move in with you, or sorry, Dad, I don't like it when people yell at me, so I'm going to remove myself. And then you're not putting yourself in this place that leads to burnout because you know where you stand.
I'm listening to you describe some of the things that you might say. And I'm imagining that there are some people that when they hear that, they're like, oh, they're like cringing.
Oh, yeah.
I can't imagine even saying that to a parent. And the other thing that grabbed my attention there was when you were talking about contentment, and we just circle around it. And I'm visualizing your graph that you were describing. I guess I'm going to call it a graph. Maybe it's not called a graph.
A graph. Yeah.
Graph, that's what it is. And I'm thinking like contentment's right in the middle. And if you're circling around it and into, like the resentment and all of that, contentment's really not far away. Like in my visual of it, it's so close, but we're just like barely missing the mark. And
and sometimes we pass through it, right? Yeah. Sometimes we might for a minute pass through contentment, and that might give us the strength to carry on another day. When we create it with intention, we're going to be able to land there whenever we want to.
Yeah.
And even in the hard moments, like the day my dad moved to an assisted living facility, it was high emotions because he had always said, I will not leave this house unless I'm dead or kicking and screaming. And so for him to come to that, we had to many discussions with him until finally he could see that it needed to happen. And that morning, I had a homework assignment due at the life coach school. And I then found out that another homework assignment I had done, a video teaching assignment I had done, hadn't passed, and I had to redo it. And I was, late getting breakfast to my parents, and people were coming. It was just, the house was a flurry of the hospice workers and getting him checked out, and us deciding what to take with him to assisted living. But I was like, I've got this. I'm going to email the life coach school and ask them for 3 more days to turn in this assignment. I'm going to finish this assignment that I have right now. I'm going to go make breakfast, and I've got this. And even as the emotions were high and a lot was going on, I knew I could handle it. And I knew how I wanted to show up to handle it. I didn't want to be falling apart. I didn't want to be upset and irritable and short-tempered, right? I wanted to be stable, and both to be that for my parents, but also to be that for myself. And it turned out really well. And yeah, there were tears. Definitely there were tears, but that's okay. That's just evidence of a very important experience going on around me. So when we're not afraid of those hard things, then we can move through them with a lot of grace.
It's such a hard thing, I know, to settle into, like to really feel those emotions, like to feel the emotions that might come up for you when you tell your parent, I'm sorry, I can't come over today, or today's the day that we're having to make this move. Like, those are hard things to sit with. And
yeah, even as my dad, we had done all this, right? All morning, moving things and picking what books he wanted to take with him. And the hospice people had to go through the whole list of things. And I said, okay, Dad, it's time to get your shoes on. And he goes, where are we going? I was like, oh, are you kidding me?
Please tell me we don't have to have this conversation again.
And I said, well, it's time to go to the VA home. Oh, that's today? Yep, that's today. Again, like you were saying, I really sat with that. I didn't try to shy away from it. I didn't try to pretend anything or make it different than it was. And we had no idea that in like less than 3 weeks, the care center was closed down for COVID. And that all our visits would then be through the window or out 6 feet apart on the patio. And those only happened a handful of times. He was there 5 months and then he passed away.
Yeah. All of the COVID things, I'm sure, I mean, they just threw a wrench in everybody's systems and plans, but my heart has ached for the people that were in care facilities and couldn't see their family at a time in their life when they really need their family. And to feel close to people.
Yeah. So an important thing I have taught my clients is actually from the Doctrine and Covenants. Of course, I've taught it more specifically to my LDS clients. Mm-hmm. My non-LDS clients, I use it more in a more general way. But let me read to you in Doctrine and Covenants, section 88, verse 36 through 39. All kingdoms have a law given. And there are many kingdoms, for there is no space in the which there is no kingdom, and there is no kingdom in which there is no space, either a greater or a lesser kingdom. And unto every kingdom is given a law, and unto every law there are certain bounds and conditions. All beings who abide not in those conditions are not justified. So I've heard this, a story. I was listening to a podcast by Jared Halverson, and he explained a story of when President Nelson read those verses when he was a heart surgeon. And at the time it was believed the human heart could not be operated on, that it would kill the patient. And he read those verses and he thought, if there are many kingdoms and laws to kingdoms, and the heart is a kingdom, I just need to figure out the laws of the kingdom of the heart. And then I can operate on it. And that's exactly what he did. I was so blown away by that principle that I was like, okay, wait a second. That means each one of my clients is living in a kingdom of their exact situation. They're caring for a husband with an illness. They're caring for a parent with Alzheimer's. Whatever the situation may be, they may have children that have needs as well. Right? I often focus on the aging person, but I cannot forget that there are still children at home that have a lot of things they're working through as well. So I talk to my clients, what is the law of your kingdom? Living in the kingdom with a husband with this illness. What have you learned the laws, meaning what works well for you in that kingdom? With Alzheimer's, generally, it's like when they get upset, a distraction helps them. Or I know one woman said to me, just my client today said to me, I know when he's feeling frustrated, I can't join that frustration or it just blows up. So I have to hold space for him to be frustrated and I don't join in his frustration. That's a law of living with my husband with this illness. So I just encourage my clients to uncover what do you know works well for you in your situation. That is a law of your kingdom. And you just have to figure out what those laws are And like it says, all beings who abide not in those conditions are not justified. So it's just not gonna, when you try like to live a normal life like you used to have, but now your life looks like this, it's not gonna work. And that's all. You just have to recognize, oh, this is my kingdom now. It's like I moved. and moves
Yes.
and moves take adjustment, right? And moves can be hard and take a while to settle into. I know when we moved to Grand Junction, it was like 3 years before I was like, okay, I like it here. I think I can handle this, you know? So if we just look at it like that in a more empowering way, oh, it's just, I've just moved and I now have new laws to figure out. I can do that.
Yeah, that is a really great way to look at it. It's giving me a really good visual, actually, for many different instances in my life too.
Right? Yeah.
And I think what's so great about that is you're making a plan ahead of time for something.
Yeah.
Like you are creating a plan. It reminded me of, it was a conference talk by Elder Bednar a long time ago, where he was like, everything in heaven, or everything that was created here on earth, was thought of and created in heaven first. And so we can abide, like we can do that same thing here. Anything we want to create, we can think about and create in our minds ahead of time. And this is the exact same principle.
So true. Yes, it is. Understanding that your emotion is not something to be afraid of. It is a vibration, and there's actually vibrations going on all around us all the time. And so the next verse in Doctrine and Covenants 88:40 says, for intelligence cleaveth unto intelligence, wisdom receiveth wisdom, truth embraceth truth, virtue loveth virtue. So it's like when we put those things out there, they find a balance and they match and they come together. So when we can create light, when we enter our caregiving journey, if we can create light, it's going to we are going to be met with light. And that may show up in finding the right doctor, in just having a break for 10 minutes, you know, that you didn't expect, a neighbor showing up with dinner. Like it can be so many ways that you are met with what you need when you are trying to intentionally create that, rather than just being whipped around by the tail, because that's generally what caregivers feel like they have no choice in, they're just putting out fires all day.
I love to notice those things that just come my way, and they're not just coming my way. I know they're like, I know Heavenly Father and Heavenly Mother are putting things in my way and happen for me, but it's so fun to be able to sit back and just recognize their hand. And
it really is.
See that.
It really is.
Yeah. So I know that from conversations before that you like to use I am statements with your clients.
I do.
I want to know about that a little bit more, because I love the statement I am. It reminds me of the Savior, because he says that often in the scriptures.
Yes. Well, I do that when we begin to uncover their beliefs that they're living from. You know, what do you believe about your life? What do you believe about yourself? What were you taught by your parents? And this kind of begins to unfold what they're living from, things they didn't even, maybe weren't even aware of. What, like one example is my parents taught me not to be lazy. So then later when she's explaining, when my husband's just sitting around, it drives me crazy. And I'm like, because you believe that being lazy, that you shouldn't be lazy. And then when we're like, oh, okay, that makes sense. Like we think that something's wrong with our husband and he's, you know, we put all these labels on him. But when we understand where we're coming from, what our beliefs are, then we can be like, oh, I can believe that I don't want to be lazy. And I don't need to put that on my husband. I mean, certainly her example was actually, he doesn't believe it either. Just with this illness, he has less energy. So she's like, oh my gosh, it must be driving him crazy to not have the energy, because I know he doesn't value laziness either. And so it just suddenly brought this clearer understanding, not only just for her, but for her husband. So we uncover these beliefs, And then I help them walk through the model and decide, okay, this belief, what emotion do you feel when you believe I am a hard worker, let's say? Well, that makes me feel powerful and strong. Okay, awesome. How do you act when you're powerful and strong? Well, I'm really good at organizing my day and sticking to my schedule. And awesome. Okay, so is this working for you? Do you like believing that you're a hard worker? So, okay, now let's look at this one that you believe you're impatient. So let's look at what that's creating for you. And do you want to keep that belief? Because you can, most certainly, you can keep any of these beliefs that you want, but let's at least look at what it's creating for you and then decide if you want to keep it moving forward. And then let's take it into greater understanding when we act on something and we're blaming it on the other person, but really it's coming from a belief that we have. So then I make up these I am statements and I make a cute little graphic and text it to them so they can put it like on a screensaver of their phone or their computer, or they can print it out or whatever. Because the more they practice these statements, and some of them are actually statements we come up with that they want to practice on. Maybe they don't feel so strong in now, but they want to work on becoming. So I put those in the I am statements and then just suggest they read it all the time, post it, and just really work on believing those I am statements, because that's going to bring them the results that they want.
I think anytime you like make an I am statement, like I am, and then powerful, or I am strong, it really does, you kind of embody, you can feel it in your body. And anytime you feel something in your body, it seems to, when we feel the spirit, it leaves such an impression, I think, because we are feeling it physically as well. So when we say I am, it kind of embodies everything. That's why
yes, absolutely. And did you ever experience, was my experience when I first practiced telling myself I loved myself, my body shuddered in rebellion.
Mm-hmm.
Like to say, Meredith, I love you was like, like, no, I can't. It was so strange to me, the feeling. And then it was so sad to me that it was so strange, right? So to work on really believing that was a really important work. I could tell just by the way my body reacted to that statement. I've done a funny little thing. I'm going to out myself if my daughter listens to this. But my youngest daughter goes to school full time. I have a daughter who's a senior that's doing online school. So our youngest daughter, we take turns making her lunch, and my husband writes her cute little notes for her lunch. So I started thinking, I'm going to write I am statements in her lunchbox. And instead of saying you are loved, I make it an I am statement. I am lovable. I am powerful, so that when she reads it, right, she's saying it to herself. And I have no idea what it's doing for her world, but just when I write it and think of what I want her to say to herself, it's making a difference in my life. So I'm hoping it is in her life as well.
Well, can you imagine? I mean, that's all Heavenly Father and Heavenly Mother want for us too. They want us to be able to say, I am lovable. I am worthy. I am full of greatness, all of those things. And it does, like when you say it, it feels good if you can believe it.
It does.
And it feels really terrible if you don't believe it, like you said.
We think that believing those things about ourselves is going to make us so selfish and cocky or something, but it doesn't. It's insecurity that creates cockiness and selfishness, right? When we really love ourselves, then we're just like, here I am.
We're here to become like the Savior. And I'm thinking about the times that he says that in the scriptures, I am he, talking to the woman at the well, I think. I actually heard somebody recently talking about this, Mark Butler, he's a coach, but he was saying that, the Savior stood and the woman was like, are you the person who, and he's like, I am he. Like he knew who he was and he was able to say it, and he accepted all of the parts of him and was able to just say, yes, I am he. And when we can say that for ourselves, I mean, of course we do, we're fearful of thinking that we should think all those things about us, but that's what Christ did. That's what And we're
Yeah.
here to be like him. So it's okay.
Yeah.
It's okay to love
It's
us.
totally okay.
It's what we're
Yeah.
supposed to do. Oh, Meredith,
Yeah.
this has been so
Totally
great.
okay.
Is there anything else you want to cover before we?
Yeah, one last thing I always want to encourage people to do if they are not yet in a caregiving role, it is likely that you will be at some point, and to just begin now to kind of take inventory of what you have, what you are, and what you have to give. Maybe your parents do live in the same town and you would be able to spend time in helping them as they age and as they need it. Do you want to do it full time, or do you want to spend a couple days a week? Do you just begin to think about that? How much do you want to be the person who just does their bills, who does their grocery shopping, or do you want to go spend 2 solid days and help them with whatever they need? Just begin to kind of think about that, because you don't know when you may face this situation where your parents may have a diagnosis of some kind, or a fall, or something that might happen, and you may suddenly find yourself needing to consider, am I going to be their caregiver? Also, another thing I would point out, sibling issues are really big in caregivers. There's a lot of times when we think siblings should be doing more than they are. Some siblings want nothing to do with it. And that's very painful when you're trying to cover everything. So it's just really, really important to recognize that they have a reason for their choice and you have a reason for your choice. And it's not worth your energy to fight against trying to get them to change their decision on their choice. Spend your energy finding the help that you need in the ways that you need it, rather than constantly getting after your sibling for not being there. And sometimes siblings, like, you're doing all the work and then the sibling shows up and is like critical, like, you should be doing that, or why aren't you doing this, right? And then that's really frustrating and aggravating. But again, know that the way you did it and their criticism are two different things. Their criticism is their viewpoint, and you did it the way you felt right about, and you can stand firm, you can stand secure in that. So I guess that was two different things, but and they're both like pretty loaded. But I do coach a lot of people on sibling things.
But so good too. Like, even if you don't put a lot of thought to that, it's like when the time does come and you're like, oh yeah, this is just that part where we might need to figure something out with my siblings here, because we look at this a little bit differently. Like, it's not a big deal. This is just a natural part of it. Like, this is just that part. And it's good just to think about it ahead of time, just so that you kind of have it on your radar.
Yeah, it totally is. My siblings we grew so close through this experience, and I don't know if they recognize it, but as often as I could, I told myself and I told them, we're all just doing the best we can. I know it. I know we're all just doing the best we can. So this brother can't come on Saturday. Okay, he's doing the best he can. I've got to honor that choice.
Yeah.
Right. And that feels so much better than like criticizing him and what he missed last month and blah, blah, blah. It's just all the time. I told myself and I told my siblings, we're just doing the best we can. We all are. And we were. And it took, it looked different at all times. It was like a fluctuation of who could help and who couldn't help.
When you're able to offer that grace to other people and recognize they're doing the best they can, it makes it so much easier to offer that same grace to yourself. And and show up for you, because you certainly need it too, right? You need that grace. So,
and then when my mom was passing and we were all gathered around her, and it was just beautiful because we had worked through stuff. And then when we were dividing up things and there was a little bit of, I want this picture and I want the same picture, we just were like, we're going to draw a name out of a hat. Who gets it, gets it, and it just was like, we're doing the best we can. So.
Yeah. So good. Okay, Meredith, tell people where they can find more of you.
Okay. My Instagram and Facebook handle are Meredith G Coaching. And that is my website name also, www.meredithgcoaching.com. I offer what I call a comeback call. They can come back from burnout, and that's a free 45-minute session. I have a stress less guide on my website, and I also have an email series of how to handle complaints from your loved one.
Ooh,
so
that's a good one. It's all good. Oh, so fantastic. Thank you so much for being here with me today. I have loved it, and I know those listening will love it too. And if anybody listening hears something that's resonated with them, or they know somebody who needs this message, be sure to share this podcast with them and spread the word, because
that would be great.
The more we share, the more we lift each other, and we make this world just a better place for all of us to live. So all right.
Thank you, Heather.
Thank you
I've
so
loved
much.
It. This has been great. Thank
we'll
you.
See you later. Bye-bye.
Okay, bye-bye.
Hey, we just wanted to thank you for spending part of your day here with us at Latter-day Life Coaches and being part of this conversation. Share this with your friends so that you can have a conversation with them on this topic as well. And as always, subscribe so you don't miss a single episode. Have a good one, my friends.